So let's kind of go over a couple of things. So yesterday, I don't know if it was Levi or Emery put up this tweet. Part of our account, it was Emery, 365 Sports Trending. This was after our segment about 24 hours ago with Jason Scheer about if Arizona was the only one who if it was up to them, they would leave. And we discussed that with Jason, that they would walk out the door. Now, it's not that easy. But look who responded to that, along with many people. Trey Wingo, formerly of ESPN, now does his own podcast and does a lot of his own work. It's a rather large gap. It says in that tweet, citing the widening financial gap between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 as a major factor. That was from Jason Scheer, who covers Arizona in the Pac-12. And there's Trey Wingo. It's a rather large gap. I think Trey probably has himself a few sources of his own. Now, also, after the Pac-12, Big 12 story and the merger and all that went straight to hell, here is Stuart Mandel from theathletic.com. We've had Stuart on the show. I have nothing against Stuart, but it does seem like this is a trend among national columnists. When the Big 12 last year was floating in debris, I don't remember anybody nationally really coming to the defense and talking about their strength. And at the time, maybe we could understand that, but they did react to it. So, Stuart, the Pac-12 is the league more recently rated, but it still has the two most valuable brands in either league, Oregon and Washington. That's debatable. A TV deal coming up a year sooner. Okay. An ability to provide 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern games every weekend. Brigham Young can bring that to the table, among others. Not clear to me why Big 12 thinks it's better off on its own.
Okay, I'll address them from the bottom up.
You guys go back and forth on
I'll address them from the bottom up. The 10:30 Eastern game, I mean, you tell me if the TV company said we're going to give you more money if you guys kick off at 9:30, the Big 12's not going to do it. So, yeah, it might be silly, but they would do it if they were told.
They got BYU.
And they got BYU, exactly. They got BYU, so they can do that. Two, the TV deal coming up sooner to me is actually a disadvantage because they have to make a decision now, and there's not enough time to really make this thing malleable and fit what you're going to do. So I think that's a disadvantage because they're in it now, and the reason that they're got rated now is because the TV deal is up now. And as far as Oregon and Washington, you can put them up against the, let's take the four best valuable brands in the Big 12 and throw them in there, and you can make an argument that, not the two of them are not the top two brands. I mean, they'd be in the top echelon of it, but definitely the top two brands is very up for debate.
The 9:30 games, the 10:30. I mean, first of all, I respect my colleagues in this industry and everything, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm always right about everything. And certainly Stuart Mandel has broken a lot of stories, but I can't lie to people out there listening. When I saw this tweet, I thought, who is pulling his strings behind his back right now at the keyboard? Because that was, to me, just a tweet that rang so hollow and was just sort of bizarre after the news broke that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 weren't going to merge. It almost felt like he was being paid to put that narrative out there. And I'm not accusing him of that, but just the timing of it and the way it came across to me at the time, I'm like, you're asking people not clear to you why the Big 12 thinks it's better off on its own. I'm asking, how in the world do you not see that the Big 12 looks better off rather than merging with the Pac? So he and I are just coming from completely different viewpoints on this. The 9:30 games, the 10:30 games, well, I think BYU will help with that, and I think that if you were to go and grab 4 from the Pac-12, you're not going to have any problems filling your 9:30 games. So that doesn't seem like too much of an obstacle. The TV deal coming up sooner, like you said, I don't know why that's a bonus. In the midst of all this chaos and calamity, I'm not sure why having it sooner is the best thing, because I would think that if you're the Big 12, you're in the perfect position where it's not too soon to where you can get your bearings, you can get yourself settled, but it's also not so far away that you're the ACC and you were just completely helpless basically for a decade plus to change your surroundings. Now, I know the ACC is probably reportedly trying to work on getting that changed, but does it have to be changed?
No.
ESPN can sit there for 12 more years and just say, 14 years and say, no, you guys signed your deal. If you want to go through the courts and all that, cool. But guess what? We're all going to be spending millions more dollars. So I think the fact that it's not right now and it's also not 10 plus years away, it's just a couple years away, sets up really well for the Big 12. And the last thing you do is scramble and make some rash decision like just bring on the entire Pac-12 and Cal and all its Stanford and everything that we got to deal through. Just get them in here. Let's hurry up because we got a deal coming up.
More is not better.
No, more's not better. And is that really going to be a well thought out probably strategy? No. So I don't see how that's a benefit. And I will argue about the Oregon and Washington. Yes, on paper and TV ratings wise, I'm sure that they are bigger brands. But I don't think that we're talking about Alabama and Georgia here. If they are bigger brands, it is moderately bigger than the biggest brands in the Big 12. And I would need to see like actual numbers across the board because I don't think it's something like Oregon, rolls in 7 million viewers per year and everybody else in the Big 12 averages like 1. I don't think it's that large of a gap. They are not blue bloods. Neither one of those teams are. So I don't know where he comes from that they're just so much more valuable because that's the way I perceived it. And maybe I'm perceiving it a little bit too sensitively, but I don't think so coming from him. I don't think that they're that much bigger. So, yeah, I vehemently disagree with basically that entire tweet.
Yeah, and it's that part is so debatable.
Exactly.
Based on what is now. Now, Seattle and Washington, we get that. We understand Oregon and the Nike brand. But you know what? They're not as hip now as they were even 5 or 10 years ago. I'm not saying if Washington and Oregon were to take a call from the Big 12 and if they joined, it wouldn't be a good thing, but it's not a desperate thing. Also, this from Daniel. I think national writers just don't like flyover country. That's why they're discounting the fact that the Big 12 is in a much better position than the Pac-12 at the moment. And again, it's all... again, it's emotions, it's fan base, it's passion, it's whatever else. So that's Stuart Mandel. Our good friend Tim Fitzgerald that covers Kansas State. Life of Fitz, this is a great tweet. The behavior of some national college football writers is really remarkable. It's clear to me why these guys vote for brands in the polls more than teams. They have a strange juvenile interest and association with these names. It's as if they see it as inclusion to their middle school selves. Now, I'm not taking shots at people who we have and will have on the air, but it's just kind of a discussion here.
I got to say, there's one part of that I will absolutely agree with. And I do think there are some people, and I'm not saying the majority, I'm not even citing anybody specifically, but I do think there are some people that it's very clear they were not the cool kids when they were younger and that they do feel a lot cooler because they're attached to, whether loosely or not, cool big brands. I do think there is some element to that, like especially people that cover a certain beat. If that's like a big brand name school, like you inevitably feel like that rubs off on you somehow. You know what I'm saying? So I do think there is a little bit of something to that. I also think there are just people who have different opinions, and we need to recognize that as well. You may think, what a stupid, like I think that was a stupid opinion. But you know what? I don't think that Stuart Mandel or anybody saying similar are just complete buffoons and idiots. I do question what their motivation and their angle is, because that, to me, last night I was reading that and I was like, how could you possibly feel like they're not in a better position? I don't get that. And the other tweet I saw that kind of ticked me off a little bit, and this is what feeds into it, because, I'm sure that if either one was watching right now, they would feel like they're getting picked on or something. But when Dennis Dodd tweets out a little smart-ass comment about Iowa State and Cincinnati and, the lack of cool there when the new commissioner's talking about how he wants to be cool and new and hip, and he says along the lines of, oh, yeah, nothing screams cool and hip like Iowa State and Cincinnati, what the hell would you know about cool and hip? Like, what do you know about it? You don't know what cool and hip is. I don't know. Iowa State, Cincinnati, that sounds like a damn good football game. Like, I just question kind of what the angle is, like I said earlier, and not to pick on guys, but when you're putting something like that out, I'm not going to feel sorry for you when Iowa State fans and Cincinnati fans all call you out on it because it's deserved. And these comments were, deservedly receiving some backlash.
Superficially, there's probably only 4 or 5 schools in the country that can be cool at any given time, and some of that is just due to their location. Look, Miami, the school is not – Miami, the school is an excellent academic school, chock full of nerds. But and I say that with all due respect. I'm not trying to knock them, but the cool factor comes in the fact that they're in freaking Miami, a city that bleeds cool and is all about USC is cool because it's in LA.
I do think there is something to guys who don't cover a specific beat or a specific conference, or just people in general who feel like maybe that's what they're going to be one day. Yeah, they would rather be in front of 100,000 people in Columbus, Ohio, watching Ohio State play another brand name like Michigan State. Then they would want to be in McLean Stadium in Waco watching them play Iowa State. And you know what? Most of the country agrees. More people in the country watch that game because they have bigger fan bases. But I do think there is an element to that in the media where you do see some people that are rooting for that because guess what? Their seats on Saturday get a lot better. They don't have to worry about going out to some random place in North Carolina to interview a team they really don't clearly care all that much about. If I was Iowa State and Cincinnati fans, I'd be pissed off that Dennis Dodd said that about my programs yesterday because I think that's just the truth kind of coming out. And Vino Vera